Okay, we are now recording, Rob.
All right, great. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the January 2022 Reston P&Z meeting. Gosh, it's hard to believe it's a new year. We have a couple administrative items we want to get out of the way before we go into the application tonight. First of all, if anybody's on the call, I'm Rob Walker, and we do have, if you'll all recall at the last meeting, it was more of a informational session. So there really weren't meeting minutes necessarily to be, I don't think, Michelle, I don't think we took formal meeting minutes, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. But so I don't think we have those to approve tonight.
I have notes if people want meetings from that, or minutes from that rather, but I don't know that we need it, but I did take notes if that's something that's desired.
Okay, great. But at our December meeting, we did kind of vote in the the extension of members who wanted to extend their terms for the new year. So this meeting, we have to re-elect the officers. And so the way we typically do that is we take I guess recommendations for nomination. We have the chair position, the vice chair position, and the secretary positions to formally act on. So
I nominate a repeat of all three.
I would like to, this is Tammy. I would like to suggest that we rotate the scribe duties. This is a lot to put on Michelle every single meeting.
Tammy, this is David Vanell. That's a great suggestion, except we tried that a couple of years ago, and what it resulted in was wildly different sets of notes for each different meeting.
Okay, would you like to take it?
No, I'm no good at that.
Michelle has worked out an attendance form, a voting form. She's, really helped get it more automated.
So
let me just ask. Yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm thinking that that it certainly helps that we are recording now. And forgive me, Rob, I don't remember where we left off with this, but are we intending to continue this? Because I think that certainly helps with things.
So yes, I think the idea was we definitely knew we want to continue recording for the virtual meetings. The question was going to be if we eventually get back to in-person meetings, what opportunity we'll have to record there, and we can cross that bridge when we get there, because I think it's going to be a while till we get back in person, quite frankly.
Yeah, and then I guess the question would just also be maybe Jose in the room, has there been any changes to any, have you guys added any video functions to the room we normally use?
I know our Department of IT is looking into all the community rooms in the county and trying to see what fixes can be done, because I know the acoustics in there are not that great. So we haven't heard back from our IT department yet.
So, Michelle, let me just ask the question. I mean, if you would prefer that we, just since you're the one who's done, the minutes for a whole year, if we would prefer that suggestion of rotating, we could certainly go back to that. I agree with David, it wasn't as consistent, but in fairness, you know, that might be the way we just have to do it, and give people, you know, a heads up when it's their turn, or put forth a schedule or whatever the best we can. And then we make do with collective notes sometimes to get the meeting minutes pulled together. But you've certainly done a great job, doing them. So, but I want to ask you that question before we commit or not commit to you.
Sure. You know what? I'm fine doing it another year. So why don't we keep me in as, if you guys want me to. But I'm more than happy to continue this for another year, and then maybe when we're back in person and everything else, we can figure things out on just workload. But I'm fine for right now with the setup.
Okay, and with that said, and again, if there's an evening or two that just doesn't work, please speak up, and the rest of us can. I always take notes, but I don't always take them as thorough as you do. But I guess with that said, if we go back to, I guess it was Bill Penniman who gave the motion. We'd need a second on that.
Second, Kennedy.
All right, thanks, Dick. So I guess all in favor of the motion to re-elect the current chair, which is Rob Walker, the vice chair is Mike Jennings, and the secretary is Michelle. That would be the vote as I understand it, or the recommendation, the motion. So
I as well.
Aye, Kennedy.
Aye.
all right, any opposed? All right, hearing none, we'll suggest that passes, or have that pass. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you to the three of you for being willing to do it again, and for having been so good at it in the past year.
I agree 100%.
Thanks, Bill, for that. And I do appreciate, Mike and Michelle a great deal. It's been a team effort. So, hey, let me just quickly jump down the agenda. There was an announcement I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention. So apparently there's some pending changes that might be made to the Fairfax County sign regulations. We as a group don't generally review comprehensive signage plans, but Fairfax reached out to us, and they were willing to come and meet with us and have a joint meeting with the Hunter Mill Land Use Committee. And then we heard of they're actually doing a public outreach meeting later this Thursday of this week, on the Thursday, January 27th. So I put that in the agenda, and there's a link to well, let's see, does it show a link to the meeting? I guess it has some contact information if you want to join the meeting. It doesn't have a direct link, but there was a link in there to their webpage. I guess the bottom line, if those who are interested in that topic, I felt that outreach meeting be the forum that any one of us could join, as opposed to having a separate meeting on that particular topic. I do think the Hunter Mill Land Use Committee might be entertaining them at one of their upcoming meetings, and they're trying to work out a date for that too. So we can let people know if that actually materializes as well. And then the last,
Rob,
yes,
in the materials you got, is there a copy of what it is they're proposing, or is it just general? What do you think, guys? Would you like us to change kind of discussion?
Yeah, very good question, Bill. There was not any more additional information. It seemed like it was a bit of a fact finding. What are people's gripes or thoughts about signage in general that might lead to amendments in a sign ordinance that they might be starting to think about. Is the impression I got.
Can I butt in here?
Sure.
My understanding is with the ZMod, actually before the main body of ZMod got passed, a relatively recent sign ordinance was passed. And I heard from some people in other parts of the county that they were horrified that this allowed churches to have big giant signs. I don't want to say neon blinking or, running letters, but it was viewed by the people who told me as, wow, we really didn't want this in our neighborhood. So I don't know. And then it was said at the time when there was an uproar about this got passed with largely very little public input, that they would review the sign ordinance in some time frame. I don't know whether that is this or whether there are, I do not know a thing about what this new thing is. So I would hope somebody from the group would attend this. It is also the night of a Reston Association board meeting that I have to go to. So I can't be the one, but I think it is important that someone attend this and figure out what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. And once again, the 100 Mill Land Use Committee was planning to possibly have them attend one of their meetings and have a chat about it. So if someone can't attend this Thursday night, there might be another opportunity coming up soon, probably between now and March at one of their meetings. And then the last administrative item was just simply showing some of the future RP&Z committee dates for our future. Just thought it'd be good to throw those on the agenda so people could put that on a calendar. Tonight's one of the odd nights where we have it on a non-Monday, and I do appreciate everybody's cooperation in being able to move this meeting around. We first had the holiday, and then there was a conflict with other committees last evening. So, and I put down there the February meeting, the third Monday in February is a President's Day holiday, so I'm estimating that our meeting would be on the 28th of February, and I put if necessary because as of right now we do not have any applications pending in February that I'm aware of. So that brings the only administrative items that I was aware of tonight. So if there aren't any questions on that, we could jump right into tonight's application that's before us. So to give it a little context here, I know we have Scott Adams that's here helping to represent the applicant. I think Steve Caniglio is here. So this is the Fannie Mae development. And we did receive an electronic package of materials. It was quite comprehensive in terms of a cover letter, some there was a list of things that were included. They kind of redid the questionnaire, or submitted the questionnaire that we often like to see. There was certainly an updated set of plans. I think they were dated December of last year. And there was some draft proffers included in that set as well. Scott, what I think the original email indicated was that we'd all receive a hard copy in the mail. I know I personally did not receive that, and I heard from other members that they had not received a hard copy either. So just FYI, that I'm not sure that hard copy got out to the members tonight.
I apologize for that, Rob. I was under the impression that that had gone out to everybody. So I will certainly check on for why
Rob,
it didn't make it.
Kennedy, I did get a hard copy. It's regular paper size, but it was a package.
Okay.
When did you get that, Dick?
Look, 1 second.
This week?
Do you know when you got it, Dick?
Well, it's one that I had saved. I guess I'm wrong. It was in November.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
But it was relevant. But okay, fine. Glad, thanks for correcting that.
So I did want to clarify. So in the packet of information, at least electronically, that I reviewed, it looks like, Scott, your planning commission hearing date has been set for the 9th of March. It looked like a board date had not been set, and then you were tentatively thinking that the staff report would be out around February 24th.
Correct.
Which would kind of be in line with that March 9th date, because again, these staff reports are coming out quite late relative to just before the planning commission meeting. So that seems to fall in line. So Scott, I just wanted to clarify if tonight, at the last meeting that I recall, there were some comments that the committee still had with the application, some concerns, I think the bigger issue was the outreach to the neighboring community and the surrounding groups, and then you had a number of scheduled meetings that I believe have been held, and so you can update us on that. And then I think the big question, if you're looking for a vote tonight, if that's the goal of tonight's, and you're shaking your head yes,
Yes.
so that'll be the premise that we enter into this. So before I let you go, Scott, and then I'll turn it over to you. I do want to just highlight we did receive, I received, and then I forwarded to the committee a letter. Looks like it was addressed to Supervisor Alcorn. It was from Christine Barnert from I guess she's a resident of the North Shore cluster, and she was basically sharing concerns and requesting that the application be, in her words, rejected. I believe that she used that term. So I know there were some later emails back and forth with our committee. I'm just responding to the letter itself. She doesn't represent herself as being an official position of this homeowners association. I read this to come across as just a personal view. Some people have said that she might be an officer of that homeowners association, but she didn't put this letter in that context, and so I didn't take it in that context. But we will maybe hear from her if she maybe joins the line. And what we can do is we'll certainly take public comment here at the end after we've gotten through some of the committee reviews as well. So with that said, Scott, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thanks, Robin. Really appreciate you having us back tonight. I'm Scott Adams. I'm a land use attorney with McGuire Woods, and we've got a project team here. You introduced some of them, but Steve Caniglio, who is with the developer of this project, Steve Crowell, who's our civil engineer from VICA, is also on. Matt Clark and Andrew Crossett, who are landscape architects with land design, and also Kevin Feline, who is our traffic consultant from Wells and Associates. And really appreciate the opportunity to come back before this committee tonight to talk about the proposal at the Fannie Mae site. As you mentioned, this is a follow-up from when we were here in November to provide an update to the committee. And since that time, we've been meeting with the community, including 2 full community meetings, and then also just individual discussions with neighboring property owners to work through some of the issues that were brought up at the meeting in November, and really try to get some resolution on those issues with the community. And so for tonight, wanted to provide sort of an overview refresher on what's being proposed, but also to highlight some of the changes that we've made since November. And then I think, as you mentioned, we are looking for a recommendation this evening. So let me see if I can share my screen there. So hopefully that is coming through. But just to get you situated, the site itself is a 28-acre site. It's located north of Sunset Hills Road, east of Old Reston Avenue, and then on two sides bounded by American Dream Way. The southern portion of the site is bisected by the W&OD Trail, and the site's about 3/4 of a mile from the Wheelie Reston Metro Station, and then also from the future Reston Town Center station. I think just by way of background, wanted to highlight that this site does have existing zoning approvals. Sorry, I just saw a comment asking if we could make it larger. So let me see.
Yeah, Scott, it's a little small on my screen, and I put it on the big one. So
Sure. Yeah, let me see if I can figure out how to do that. How does that look?
okay, it looks much bigger.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So just, I guess, again, by way of background, the site has an existing zoning approval on it that was pursuant to a zoning case from the early 90s. It approved total development of 850,000 square feet of office in 3 buildings at a 0.62 FAR. Of those 3 buildings, one of them has been built. It has about 396,000 square feet. And then there are 2 approved but unbuilt office buildings on the site with a total of a little over 450,000 square feet of unbuilt development, and then also a fairly significant underground parking garage that is proposed associated with those 2 buildings. The site also is currently configured. American Dream Way has 2 gates on either end at Old Reston, and then also at Sunset Hills a little bit further back on American Dream Way. And I think just as importantly, you wanted to highlight that the current approval, while it has open space on it, it's 100% private, so there's no public access to the site under the current approval. The plan that we're putting forward is one that we think is better aligned with the goals of the comprehensive plan, and does so by creating new housing opportunities, but also, I think more importantly, opening up the site to the broader Reston community and creating a significant public amenities on the site. The project that we're proposing, or this option, would be to retain the existing office building, but add a development option that would allow between 87 and 92 townhouses to be built on the property as a alternative to those 2 unbuilt office buildings. We think there are a lot of benefits to this development option versus the existing, including the reduction of about 200,000 square feet of potential development, which also leads to a fairly significant reduction in the amount of anticipated traffic from that office option versus the townhouse option that's being proposed. As part of this proposal, we would maintain the existing access points on American Dream Way, but would pull the gate that currently exists at Old Reston, sort of in this area here, and pull that back so that it really only covers the office portion of the property, making sure that this site is open for the residential portion and there's no gates or impediments to access to the residential portion of the property. I guess on the townhouses that are being proposed, we've got some examples of potential housing design there on the screen. Really, these townhouses are planned to be high quality in design and really designed to be in scale with the surrounding community. Really focused on high quality materials and architecture that we think are going to be additive to the Reston community. I think one of the I guess questions or concerns we heard at the November meeting related to some of the green building commitments. And so we've maintained the existing commitment to green building certification for all of these new homes. But we've also updated our proffers so that we're committing to the installation of conduit for electric vehicle charging stations for each unit in each house at the time of initial construction. We've also added a proffer commitment to install conduit to facilitate the future installation of solar panels in each one of these buildings. So really trying to go above and beyond on the typical green building commitments for sort of expectations in the county. Additionally, this is a project that is providing affordable units in line with the county's policy goals for the provision of affordable housing, and it'll include both affordable dwelling units and also workforce dwelling units. And I think more importantly, this is a project that will include those affordable units as for sale, which is something where there's a significant need in the county and not a lot of supply for those for sale affordable units. So really think we're going to be advancing the county policies and goals towards more affordable for sale product. One of the major components of this proposal is the creation of some really major park spaces that will bring the public onto the site and really create what we think will be a major amenity for the Reston community. This project has a significant amount of open space that's being proposed. 59% of the site is planned as open space, and that equates to a little over 18 acres of land. That's I guess in our view, a pretty large commitment to open space, and is even a significant increase over what was previously approved with the office, which had a 55% commitment to open space. I think more important than just the total number is the fact that a significant portion of that open space is also going to be publicly accessible, really trying to create amenities that bring the community into the property. Approximately 30% of the site is going to be publicly accessible open space, and that equates to a little over 9 acres of both combination of public and publicly accessible open space. And we think that is a huge asset to the community, and is really going to create, I think, a park space that is going to become a centerpiece of this part of the Reston community. Part of that publicly accessible open space also includes that area between the W&OD Trail and Sunset Hills. And we've been working with staff and with the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority on dedicating, and we've committed to dedicating that portion of the property to the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority to further their future plans for a major linear park adjacent to the W&OD Trail. And so this commitment is really going to further that and take a huge step forward, towards creating that linear park. And I think at the end of the day, the thing that we're excited about is for this portion of the W&OD Trail, you'll have significant public park space on both sides of the trail, and really creating a green corridor that I know, is desired running along the W&OD. In addition, within that public park space and the design of that, we've really centered it around the enhancement of those existing ponds that are out on the site, and also the creation of a pretty significant public trail network. And that's everything that's outlined in red on this slide is part of that public trail network that's being proposed. Really with a focus on providing access to the 3 ponds and the W&OD Trail, but also really maintaining and enhancing the connections from the site to the surrounding community. And so part of that is the frontage improvements on Sunset Hills Road. As part of this project, we're committed to installing a new sidewalk along the entire frontage between Old Reston and American Dream Way, along with a landscape amenity panel, so street trees as well along that frontage. And we've also committed to dedicating future right-of-way for the anticipated bike trail along Sunset Hills Road. And I think importantly, those trail improvements, those frontage improvements will actually come at the same time that the development is occurring. So, those will be improvements that come in with the development, and again, really provide, I think, good connectivity for the surrounding area. One of the other things we wanted to highlight, and this was something that was a large part of the conversation back in November, was the trail connection from North Shore down to Sunset Hills. I think, as you may recall, the current access, there's a trail connection and a gate coming onto the Fannie Mae property that is currently private and is open and closed at the current tenant's discretion. And I think in that prior iteration that we presented back in November, we had essentially maintained the status quo of that connection remaining private, and still having that gate at the tenant's discretion. And I think part of that initial proposal was really based on the needs of a potential secure tenant for the site and their concerns about site security. And frankly, those concerns and needs on our end have not gone away. However, I think we heard loud and clear that that's a very important connection for the community. And so that's really been a huge focus of our community outreach is finding a solution to that issue that balances some of those security concerns that we had, but also knowing the importance of that connection to the public. We had put forth several options to sort of, I guess, address the issue, some of which were better received than others. And I think where we landed is, frankly, adopting a suggestion that was made by Lynn Molston and others in the community to keep that existing pedestrian access in its current location, but simply make it public. And so, we have accommodated that in the proffers. I think the second part of that as a way to accommodate some of those security concerns was the ability of a future tenant to simply install a fence along that existing pathway that still maintains the public access, but also gets to some of the security concerns. And so, that fence could either be installed essentially between American Dream Way and that existing pedestrian path where it is now. I think the other alternative is we would either move the path or build a new path sort of parallel to the existing one, sort of a few feet over, and simply put up the fence there. But at the end of the day, keeping that pedestrian access in the same location, and also making that access fully public, which it is not now. And so our proffers have been updated to reflect that solution. I think the feedback we've received from the community is that that's a solution that works for them and is acceptable to them. I guess one of the question that was raised yesterday was just whether that connection will be put into a public access easement, and the answer to that is yes. That we anticipated a public access easement, and I think based on that comment, we'll add some clarifying language to the proffers to that effect that'll be put into a public access easement. I think overall we think it's a good solution that provides a true public connection as opposed to the existing private connection, but also addresses some of the security concerns that we had. So getting back to, I guess, some of the overall park space plans, wanted to highlight a few things within that public trail network, and really the plans to provide additional amenities within that public park space, and that trail network to make sure that we're creating a space that's really welcoming and usable for the public. And so this is a sort of a zoomed in view of Pond A and Pond B. Pond A is the pond on the western side of the property closest to Old Reston. Pond B is the pond that's in the center of the property, and really highlighting there sort of the more passive recreation amenities that we're proposing, including boardwalks and overlooks, but also seating opportunities along the trail network. And then over on Pond C, really having more of the mix of the active and passive recreation opportunities there, including open lawn space, a playground, but also having those seating areas and other passive recreation opportunities. I did also want to just highlight the significant public art that's proposed throughout the public park space. The site currently contains a significant amount of art installations that are centered around famous poets. And under this proposal, most of those installations will either be relocated or kept in their current location, and will be made public, and part of that public amenity, that public park space, which we really think will add to the sort of sense of place, and also create a really nice mixture of focal points within the public park amenities. Also wanted to just talk quickly about some of the environmental constraints on the site, but also what we think are really opportunities. We've been very focused on respecting and enhancing the environmentally sensitive areas on this site. And at the end of the day, this is a proposal that's going to significantly improve the overall environmental character of the property. And a big part of that centers around retaining and enhancing the existing ponds on the site. So those ponds are going to be left in their current configuration, sort of no reshaping or changes to the overall pond design, but adding a lot of enhancements and upgrades to really make them more environmentally sustainable, which they currently are not. And so those include removing sediment invasive species, installing new sediment forebays, and also installing new aquatic benches to support wetland species. Really working to create a healthy ecosystem at the end of the day that's going to be a significant upgrade and enhancement over the current status of those ponds. Additionally, just did want to highlight that since November, we have slightly revised the townhouse layout in sort of this area up here near Pond A, just to pull the townhouses and the drive aisle and retaining wall there back further from Pond A. We were getting a little bit close to encroaching on the existing environmental quality corridor there, and wanted to make sure we had some additional space based on some feedback that we'd received from staff and others. And so, again, pulling back and making sure that we don't have any development encroaching into any of the environmental quality corridors that are on the site. And so in addition, though, to, I guess, limiting those encroachments and making sure that, the development is not encroaching into those environmentally sensitive areas, did want to highlight that we're actually adding 30,000 square feet of new environmental quality corridor to this site. Further down on the eastern portion, which is closer to sort of the RPA and the stream head for the property, sort of as it leaves the site. And so we really think that that's a more effective place and an appropriate place to add some of those additional EQC areas. And I guess on top of that, we've also committed to adding a conservation easement in that area to, again, further the protection, environmental protections for that area. So I guess just to sort of wrap up, as Rob mentioned, we are scheduled for Planning Commission public hearing on March 9th. We do not have a staff report yet, but again, as Rob mentioned, we're expecting that on February 24th. I think we feel very good about the project and the benefits of it. I think we're excited about it. We think it's going to provide a lot of benefits to the broader Reston community, in addition to potentially adding for sale housing options in walking distance of Metro, along with some of those affordable housing and enhanced green building commitments. We're really excited about opening up the site to the public and really creating an amenity with that over 9-acre public and publicly accessible park that's being proposed. And from an environmental standpoint, again, really feel like this is a project that is going to improve the condition of the site versus where it's currently at. So with that, I'll stop, and we're happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
All right, thank you, Scott. Let's see. I did just want to ask a point of clarification before we get into the questions, just so I can remember for the committee's benefit. So, Scott, today the way the land exists around the open space around the ponds and the trail network that's there today, it's my understanding that that's really private land, privately owned and privately maintained. But they've been, I guess, allowing the public to come in and utilize it without too much fuss. But it's really not, there isn't a real existing public accessibility element to it today. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's all private, and I think, you know, they've not been. I think the current tenant who sort of controls the site has not been stopping people for the most part from coming in and walking there. But you're correct that it is all private.
Yeah, I know when I've got on off the WOD trail and I've had my bike and I went over there to look at the ponds. And it looks pretty, and then I'm like, I'm not allowed. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to be here or not. I never really quite understood. But so I guess that's the one carrot to this option of residential option is to solidify that and making that area more publicly accessible and truly publicly accessible, and allowing, you know, that as an amenity. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think not just sort of opening it up to the public, but really sort of enhancing it and building, you know, put some amenities in there that really make it a really nice park space.
All right, I'm going to try to go down the list as it's represented on my screen. I'm going to start with David Vanel. Any comments, David?
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I do. I have a few. I'm impressed by the changes that you folks have made to this with the EV charging and the solar panels and the dedication of the to the Northern Virginia Park Authority. It sounds to me like you took a lot of our comments and perhaps the comments of the neighborhood to heart. I'm a little concerned about the number of townhouses, but you mentioned that you were now doing affordable and workforce housing, I assume including rental and for sale. What is your percentage on that?
Sure. So it's actually all for sale on the site.
All for
But
sale, okay.
yes, but the percentage of affordable housing is 12% of the units are affordable, and that includes 4 of the units will be ADUs. I'm sorry, 6 of the units will be ADUs, and 5 of the units will be WDUs.
Okay, good. That's excellent, frankly. Some of the comments I'm going to offer come from Sue Straits, who's not able to be here tonight. She said that, among other things, she said that obviously the public access to the ponds and the areas around the ponds is important, and she would like to see a more detailed maintenance plan and commitment to improve the health of the pond, perhaps more significant, features like the fountain and the aeration of the pond to keep it from going bad. Also, do you know if the stream that runs through there actually connects to the ponds? And if it does, perhaps you should be coordinating with RA regarding stream quality.
So I guess just to maybe address the first comment about sort of the maintenance and enhancements of that, but we actually have pretty detailed specific proffers that talk about all of those commitments to the enhancement and the maintenance of those ponds. So everything we've talked about and committed to is in the proffers and spelled out in pretty good detail in terms of what those improvements are going to be. In terms of the stream connection, I may turn that over to Steve Crowell, who's our civil engineer. Who was on. Oh. It looks like he's actually in the attendees, so I don't know, Jose, if it's possible to sort of
just brought him back up.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks.
should be able to unmute.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sorry, gentlemen, I couldn't unmute, and I think my invitation was originally scheduled for John Amatetti. So when I tried to schedule on, I did not get his paycheck nor his actual ability to unmute myself. So I apologize for that. But yeah, so to answer the question, the ponds were not designed to be offline. when the ponds were initially built, the stream or the water course was there. The ponds, when they were constructed, I want to say in the 70s. Don't remember the exact date, but they were built online. So I don't know that I'd call it a stream anymore, really, until you get downstream of Pond C, the furthest one downstream. It's kind of been disrupted previously with the presence of the ponds. So, maintaining the quality of the ponds themselves was the primary goal, and actually even enhancing them and their water quality, as Scott mentioned, committing to that in the proffers, both through cleaning them up and doing the improvements to them, adding some buffers around the perimeters, to help improve the quality of the water before it even gets into them. And then our design includes some pre-treatment structures. So to try and, not to be overly technical about it, I'll say it in a simpler way, to try and get the water cleaner before it even gets to the ponds, right? To do some pre-cleaning to keep them and that what remains of that stream downstream of the pond in the highest quality that we could, and even hopefully improve the condition that exists today.
Thank you very much for that. That's very good. I'll just end by one thing. I think I'm going to have a proposal once we've heard from the public. So if Rob could come back, that would be fine. I think you guys have made some impressive improvements and some impressive additions to this proposal. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Next was Jake, but he already sent me a chat saying he's deferring his time to others because he's not doesn't have a mic. All right, let's go to John. John, we can hear John tonight. John Capilla.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, John.
Ooh, man, finally got it fixed. Yeah, I know we've reviewed everything a couple of times now, and I know they've worked hard to improve on some of the comments that we've made over the past meetings, and I really don't have any additional comments and appreciate their efforts.
Thank you, John. Let's go to Matt. Matt Stevison.
Hi. I also would like to just kind of thank them for the changes and the things that they've done to listen to us. I mean, going through all of our proposals, I mean, this is starting to tick a lot of the boxes that I think keep being brought up again and again: electric car charging, solar, public space. I guess for me, as I'm kind of looking at this, really my comparison is to the originally approved site layout, with the additional 450,000 square feet of office building and the impacts of what the traffic and also view sheds from the existing housing around there would be if that were to be built. And I see this proposal as an improvement on that in every way. It provides some more public space that's going to be accessible for the full community. I think that townhouses at this location are appropriate as a sort of density hop from the single family homes. Then it kind of bumps up to townhouses and then gets into a higher density as you get closer and closer to the toll road. So that kind of makes sense as far as kind of fitting in that middle there for me. So I don't have any additional questions. As was previously mentioned, we've seen this a few times, but I just wanted to kind of thank them for listening to some of our comments. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Matt. Next is Michelle.
Hi, thank you. You didn't address whether or not you'll be joining RA. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. So we have had some discussions with RA about potential membership, and I don't think we've made a final decision on whether it will or will not be part of RA. I think part of the discussion is going to relate to sort of some of the costs related to maintenance of the proposed park space and I think some other details like that. But those discussions are happening and I think will continue to happen, particularly once we get an ultimate builder on board. And I think that's when we will probably make the final decision on it.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a big holdup for some of us. you're proposing to add 90 houses and the ponds are great, but that's not the recreation and other amenities that other other townhomes have in RA or in Reston. And as just a matter of really making sure that some of the new development is better integrated into the entire city and the entire area. This is a great concern, I think, for a lot of us. So it would be nice to see if you could make more progress there and make a more firm commitment. And I think, if I may, I mean, I agree with others that I appreciate you listening to us on issues of EV charging and also the solar panels. Adding those conduits is fantastic. I do want to say that it is just a bit disappointing that it does take the community that much effort to ensure that they can have something as basic, I think, as access to the metro protected. And I do not think that this is something that we should have to continue to see from developers to come here. But I just say that the process is disappointing. So it seems to be doing, I think that's great, but this has gotten to be a bit much. So in the proffer, it said that from dusk to dawn. I mean, you said you're going to rewrite it to put this into an easement. I mean, you're not saying, right, that it would be closed. A gate would be closed, and if somebody got off the metro a little bit too late, couldn't walk home, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we, as part of the public access easement, I mean, it would obviously have some limitations on when people are using those trails. I think we're open to what that looks like. I think in the other public open spaces that we have on site, I think we had put like a 10 p.m. Limit on that, so we didn't have sort of the public coming on kind of overnight and using the public space. I think we would propose something similar for the public access easement for that trail.
Yeah, so that's going to be, I think that would be a real impediment for those who use the metro for work and may have to work later hours. So, again, cutting off access, it might not be the hours you get to work, but people do work later hours. I'm concerned we don't have final language on that proffer to ensure that the community's access, again, to something as basic as a grocery store in the metro is protected. So I would like to see better language there, and I'd like to see Fleetwood.
Hey, Michelle, I think I don't think it's just me. I don't know if you were buffering quite a bit and we lost you a good bit. Some of your.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Is this any better now that I turned off the video?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. I don't know where we left off, so forgive me, but my main issue was, until we have final proffer language ensuring that access to grocery stores and metro are protected for the community, we need that final language. We're talking about really cutting off basic access there, and I don't know where I cut off, but if it's a real public access, it shouldn't have a time limit when you're talking about walking home from the metro. I live in walking distance to the metro. I've walked home from the metro many nights after 10 p.m. We simply cannot cut that off, and we need to see final language. So that's what I have.
Michelle. Next is Mike Jennings.
Hi, Rob. I just have, first of all, I have 3 questions I wanted to ask. First question is, how many guest parking spaces are being provided in this development? I tried to do a count, but I wasn't sure I had it right.
I don't know if I have the exact number of guest spaces. We are providing parking that is above the ordinance requirement for parking. I think we've got a requirement of 249 spaces and we're providing 258. But let me see if I can
Yeah,
find
my,
that
my,
number.
my question is, for the spaces that are not part of the garages, I, I, I mean, I counted maybe 30 or 32, something like that. Which I don't know. We have a lot of developments around town where people are parking on streets and stuff when they have guests, or there's no place to park. So
Yeah, so we have sorry, it's in our tabulation. We have two spaces for each unit that are in garage parking
right, right.
for those individual units, and then we have 74 surface spaces that are proposed throughout the project.
And those 74 could be used by guests or workers or whoever.
Correct.
Okay. Your waiver number 4, which is for less than 200 square feet of yard space in the rear entry townhomes, said that sheet C04B would somehow show what the minimum lot yardage is, and I didn't see any language saying what those minimum yard lots would be for the rear entries.
Yeah, and I think what that was referring to was the lot typicals showing the layout for the units. I mean, I think that I guess a couple things on the 200 square feet. What we've tried to do, and I think this is something that is similar to most other townhouse projects that are developed in Fairfax County, is consolidating the open space so that you have larger open spaces throughout the site rather than sort of a 200 square foot individual kind of mini yard within each townhouse unit. That sort of design it doesn't match up with kind of what types of townhouses are usually being developed, and so it's a little bit of I think an outdated requirement in the zoning ordinance for townhouses. I think that said, one of the things that we've tried to do is actually create more of sort of a front yard for the units, so that within I guess the layout of the site, that we're actually providing a little more green space there in front of each one of the units. And I'll welcome our landscape architects to maybe talk about that a little bit more.
I was gonna just jump in. This is Mike Vanat with McGuire Woods, and yeah, Scott's right that waiver is exclusive to the rear loaded townhomes, and so the front load townhomes will still have that 200
right.
Foot privacy yard in the backyard. It's just the rear loaded ones. Really, the design of those units, when they come out, it's not sort of this private gated off front yard. There's still green space in front of it. It just doesn't count for sort of your personal privacy yard, and it's just really the design of those sorts of units. Again, I think it's a provision in the ordinance that essentially predates really when we started seeing a lot of these rear load townhomes, kind of more of an urban style, come into the county.
Okay. And third question is, what is you guys' understanding of the position and the feeling of the neighboring communities after your discussions with them? Where do you see that they are on that?
I mean, I think that overall the biggest issue that I think we heard from the neighboring community was really the focus on that pedestrian access. And I think what we're hearing tonight is maybe we need to go a little bit further in terms of just when that access is open. And I think we're maybe to sort of go back to Michelle's comments. I think we're happy to commit that that'll be open 24 hours. I think we had initially tried to align it with where the other public access was within the park space, but we're happy to do that, make that commitment to the 24-hour public access for that trail connection. And I don't know. I don't want to speak for the community about, you know, where they're at on the issue. I think what we tried to do was take the suggestion that the community made for how to address the public access and simply adopt that as the solution. So I think we're hopeful that that addresses the concern that was heard. I think we also heard, you know, positive comments about the park space and the public access that's being provided. So again, I don't want to speak for the community, but I think the biggest issue that, you know, we were working through with them was that trail easement, and I think we are hopeful that we've addressed, you know, those concerns, and I guess the additional concern about sort of the timing of that access and when it's open.
Okay. So overall, the good things are certainly the addition of the public open space. I mean, we rarely see someone saying, here, I'll give you 7 acres of open space. That's fantastic. The infrastructure for the EV and solar, we don't see that. That's awesome. I like the general architecture that is shown in some of the pictures. It looks good with articulation and fenestration, and the reduction in the potential FAR to meet the comp plan is good. The things that are concerning to me is, as Michelle, I agree with her, there's no commitment to RA. It's just a statement that you've had discussions and it will be up to the ultimate contractor. I would definitely want to see a commitment, because especially those townhomes, they're going to be very close to a lot of Reston paths. And I think they ought to be contributing something somehow to utilize those. I'm not real pleased with two or some, I don't know how many rows, but the rear entry ones, or the north-south townhomes only having 22 feet between them. You know, I've been to some places where it's narrow and it's hard to wrangle vehicles around. So that's my overall feeling on things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Rebecca.
Hey, everybody. It's great to see you. The presentation I thought was good. I like that the solar and EV is in there. I'm a Reston resident, and all of my neighbors are driving Teslas, so I imagine that'll be something similar there too. And also, what I really like about this site, what you're doing with it, is that the townhouses aren't right up on Sunset Hills, like a major roadway. I see that all the time. I feel like it's safer for families that their kids can be back a little bit farther and have that buffer, that gap with the ponds there. So overall, I like the architecture. I think it was good planning. I agree with Matt. I think it's a good in between multifamily and single family, having the townhouses there. So I hear what Michelle's saying, and if you can make a commitment to leave access open, I think that's a positive for me as well. So overall, I think it's a good site, and it will be better when it's done than it is currently.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next is Richard Kennedy.
Thank you, Rob. This is a very interesting site, and there's been some very interesting discussion so far. I am still turned off by, and you may remember, let me get some water here. At the last meeting we had, I made it clear that I thought those townhomes are all stuffed together. There's the beautiful ponds, but they're nice open space to look at, but they're not otherwise usable. Can you tell me what the distance is from any of these housing units to the metro the metro access point that
Yeah, so it's about the site's about 3/4 of a mile from the Wheeler Reston metro station, and then it's also about 3/4 of a mile to the Reston Town Center station.
To the Reston Town Center station, really? Okay, I just think it doesn't, some of the inputs that were sent in show the kind of architecture that is used much closer to the metro stop, a 1/4 of a mile or less probably. And this is such an unusual, in many ways, an isolated residential space. As I had indicated before, I think it would be much more attractive if you could, in the broad use, if the units could be, number of units significantly reduced. And I know you, as developers, are probably not interested in hearing that, but it's an isolated area. It's an unusual area. It's got all sorts of connections in unusual ways to the rest of that part of Reston. And I'm just not comfortable with that. It's almost the wrong use in that space. And I know you've made the argument that, well, it could have been a lot more traffic. Somebody else endorsed that as well, as it turned out. But it has zoning for a much higher density for office buildings. But obviously, there's not the need for those right now, especially in this location. So I'm troubled by that. If you want to point out anything that would make sense, I'd appreciate hearing it. The other point is I appreciate your commitment to the workforce housing. As you know, our supervisor is reviewing the requirements that the county will eventually make for the Hunter Mill District. We've made some changes with respect to rental for the rest of the county, but not for, it does not apply for Reston. But we are pushing the idea that we need to have lower income levels available, and we're willing to make some trade-offs for that. Also, I'm on the Housing Commission, and we do have problems with for-profit expensive housing. Both the developers do, and it's going to be something that has to be worked out. But we're going to, it's Reston, we're going to continue with our supervisor to make sure that we have as much affordable housing as at all possible. So those are my comments.
Sure. And maybe Rob, if I can just respond quickly to some of those comments, and appreciate the sort of the thoughtfulness of kind of looking at the site holistically and how it fits in. I think from our perspective, we do think that townhouses are a good use for an appropriate use for this location, particularly sort of where it's at in relationship to the metro, sort of that 3/4 of a mile. That's a distance that is walkable, and that people will walk and bike to metro. And I think sort of the fact that we're surrounded by townhouses, sort of lends itself to the fact that it really is a good location for that type of use. I don't disagree with you that in the current configuration, it is a little bit isolated, and I think part of that is just the way that it's been developed, and the lack of sort of connections or integration into the broader neighborhoods and community. And I think that's one of the things we're really focused on, is making sure that this is part of the community, and not just that we're part of the community, but that the community is coming onto the site and using that public open space that's being proposed and using the the site. And I guess I'll also maybe push back lightly on the idea that the ponds are not sort of usable. I mean, I think the ponds are a great amenity. And some of the proposals that we have with the boardwalks and the overlooks really are going to make sure that the public not only has access to those ponds, but that they really are an integrated amenity into that public open space. And so I guess from our perspective, we think they're, just as valuable and as usable as part of the park space as, the trails and the playground and the turf areas. So I guess that would sort of be I guess my sort of commentary on it. But I guess on the affordable housing, I will point out that unlike a lot of projects, this site actually will be proposing not just WDUs but also ADUs. So we're going to be getting those for sale units at 60% of AMI and lower.
Good.
All right, thanks, Scott. We have a couple more committee members to go, and then I do want to hear from Commissioner Carter. I'm seeing in the chat there's some people in the public that would like to maybe say a few things, and that's we'll get to that after the committee's comments, or I'll go through the chat and try to make sure we've kind of addressed things that have come up in the chat as we've gone along. But next is Tammy Petrine.
Thank you. Scott, would you mind putting up your drawing with the red circulation pattern, please?
Sure.
And I hope I'm not having a psychotic break. You do have an aquarium behind you, don't you? I think I
do
see
not. That's
little teeny
just
fish.
my window.
Well, then beware of these questions, because I swear I saw a team of little fish above your shoulder. Okay. First of all, thank you, Dick Kennedy. I totally agree. The site is fabulous. Your idea for the townhouse, no issue. The amount of units is way too much. Number 4, eliminating that 200 square foot backyard. There's a reason for that. Where do you expect people to store their bikes? The garages are not big enough for trash, recycling, cars, all the stuff that people have, and bikes. So we're supposed to be a bike community. People need that 200 square feet for storage, or to let their dogs out, or to let their toddlers out in a safe place. So to me, that is totally unacceptable, and that's a hard no for me. Please reduce the number of units on your site, and you'll have a rousing approval. Also, can you explain in your modification waiver document number 7 and 8 regarding the vegetation? I couldn't understand what that was exactly.
So I'm trying to find where I guess I am unmuted. So I guess maybe a couple things on the number of units. I think from our perspective, we're below the maximum density that's proposed in the comprehensive plan for mixed use development on the site. And part of the reason that we've created a little bit more of an urban configuration is because we're trying to maximize the open space on the site. And so I don't think it's I guess from our perspective, we feel like the number of units is appropriate and in line with the comprehensive plan, density recommendations, but also, some of the sort of broader design considerations in terms of trying to maximize the amount of open space. On the waiver question, I may defer to our landscape architects on that one, because I believe it's both referred to some of the peripheral lot landscaping and parking lot landscaping.
Scott, this is Matt. How do you want? I'm not sure I understand how you want to answer how you want to answer that in terms of the peripheral lot landscaping. What do you
Can
drive?
can you explain the waivers you're requesting on the vegetation? 7 and 8 under your modification and waiver document.
Let me check on that. Hold on one second.
Yeah, so I guess, Tammy, I think and I'll let Matt chime in once he looks at it, but it relates to the existing sort of surface parking and garage that's already in existence, and basically allows us to use the existing mature vegetation that's already planted there and around that garage and that I guess that's already developed and on the site. But
Okay, so it's existing parking lot vegetation. It's
Correct.
accruing to that,
correct.
you think? Okay.
Yeah, Andrea's checking on that right now to get you a more complete
Okay.
answer. Just give us half a
I
second.
want to move along because I have a bunch of questions. I will not be hoping that this goes for a vote tonight. We're meeting on the 28th of February. Staff report comes out on the 24th. I really want to hear what the staff says on this. There are so many odd things, in my view, on the floodplain, the RPA, and the EQC that need clarification. I don't think you get to build right on top of an EQC or an RPA. I think there's a setback, and there's no staffer here to tell us what that setback is there. So we could get the answer on the 24th from the staff report. So I will be hoping for a deferral of vote tonight. But regarding the floodplain, last time there was a discussion about the minor floodplain. Well, the operative word is floodplain. And with the kind of storms that are coming so much fiercer and more frequently, a floodplain is a hazard. And that needs to be satisfied, to my view. If you reduce the units and move units away from the ponds and up out of that floodplain, you solve that problem. If you look at this diagram and you think, well, I'm going to buy one of these very, luxury townhouses with all the fine materials. And I look at this, there is no place for the owner community to have any sort of activity outside that isn't in the public realm. And forget that they don't even have a 200 square foot backyard. But that's the problem I have here, is they're stacked like cordwood, like almost like they're, I mean, this doesn't represent to me a layout of a luxurious townhouse development. It looks like they're all smashed in there. That to me
And
is
Tammy,
a
just
huge
to
problem.
quickly point out, there's a central green space that's a private amenity recreational space. So that's what we've designed as sort of the main
For
gathering space.
90 townhouses, that's it. That's ridiculous. So, Central Green, it isn't Central Park. It's a tiny little patch, and I have a problem with that. The other problem is the fuel tank. I see where it was on the western side of this parcel, and you're going to be moving it over into the main building. So that question was answered when I looked carefully at the map. But I just want to say you've done some good things. The easement for access and unlimited access at all hours is great. I'm looking at this red map, and at the very least, if you look at Pond A, the red line walking trail above it is right next to units. Could you eliminate from Old Reston Avenue to where the loop goes down and coincides with the WNOD, and at least give people who buy those townhouses the privacy for that area, so that people aren't right up in their area? I just find these public trails way too close. to private property to be comfortable. So basically, I would like a deferred vote until we get the answers to the environmental stuff from the staff. What do they think about the quantity of units? Of course, you're going to want to have as many as you can. We don't want a redo of Tall Oaks, which is terrible. And that is what this is looking like and feeling like. And we just don't want to make that mistake again. You can have a really elite cluster here if you're careful about quantity of units and the placement and giving them privacy, the unit owners privacy. These things are not going to be cheap. So I think you need to reconsider your quantity. Thank you.
Tammy, this is Steve. One quick thing. I live in DC and I have a roof deck, and all these units have roof decks as outdoor space for each unit. And I'll tell you, I use a roof deck a lot more than I ever would have used an outdoor backyard of my townhome.
Yeah, well, you may not have a dog or a toddler or bicycles.
I have a
And
dog
this is not, Steve, this is not DC. This is Reston. And
dog
we
and
expect to
4.5-year-old.
have the minor zoning. There's a reason zoning requires 200 square feet. And you're not giving it here. So that's a huge problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Let's go on to William Piggies.
Okay. Well, first off, I'm going to reiterate everything that Tammy has said, and I'm in wholehearted agreement with her 100%. However, I will say some positive things here. I really commend your public park space areas, the related proposals to those. I can only say one thing, though, natives. You need to be looking at native plants for any new planting or any trees or whatever that have to be removed, be replacing them with native species. That's one of the principles behind Reston. It's also one of the principles behind what's developing over all of Fairfax County, is the use of native plants, and certainly not non-native plants, or especially those that are considered invasives. So I see that, they have the rooftop spaces up there. I see plantings on those. So how much of the roof is available for the decking area, the outside space? Is that, a significant amount, or is the whole space, or what occurs with that?
I'll answer typically. It depends on the various builder plans, but I don't think I've seen any builder plan where less than half of the roof is used as a deck. It's not meant to be another floor. It's meant to just be a deck and a porch. I think NVR has some space up there that's occupied, and I think Toll might, but it's not very much, and it's certainly less than half.
Okay. So there was some mention of solar panels, or is that really real? Are you putting those where then?
So the commitment on solar panels is to put the conduit in so that it's totally set up and the house is wired for the future installation of solar panels.
Okay.
So that's the commitment, is making sure that all of these houses are totally solar ready.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.
And just maybe quickly on the native species, I just wanted to confirm we have a proper commitment that all of the new plantings on the site are native.
Okay.
Absolutely. This is Matt. I mean, and as you said, we're seeing that all over, and it's the right thing to do, 100%.
Right. Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm a master gardener. I have an adopted spot here in Reston that's about the size of a football field. It's forested. It's also suffering from erosion, and I've been going out and sort of recreating the forested area in part of it. So it's a big issue. Anyway, one of the other things I wanted to ask about is downspouts. What happens at a downspout, and how do you take care of that when it hits the ground?
I may defer on that one to our civil engineer. I think I know what happens, but he will definitely know.
Yeah, I mean, more often than not, we're hard piping these nowadays. Splash blocks was like the classical option. If we do that, it's having to get at least, I think it's 5 to 6 feet away from the building foundation. Trying to be, green building principle aware. But a lot of them, I'd say most of them, nowadays with the plans I'm seeing and the architecture we end up dealing with is hard piped to some kind of header structure and then gets out to the roof, or sorry, off of the roof, out the downspout, and to a structure. But it's similar to Steve's point. Until we have the final architecture, it's hard to say that with 100% certainty. But I'd say more often than not, we're seeing them hard piped to structures.
Okay, and so they basically go to a single or multiple types of I guess you would say storm retention tanks or something of that nature?
Well, typically they're going into the storm drain system, right? That's going to be either in the alleys or in the streets. Oftentimes, we're hooking that system up before it hits the stormwater ponds into some kind of hydrodynamic separator, right? So I wouldn't say it's into stormwater retention. I wouldn't even necessarily say detention in the structures, but there'd be some kind of pre-treatment and quality, control upstream of the pond before it ultimately makes its way into the pond, and that's where any design detention and perhaps passive retention would take place.
You have a number of conditions where it could also be basically not have to be piped anywhere. You could use a dry well if, I'm sure you're familiar with dry wells. I live in a townhouse and my neighbor and I have a situation where we had just a very small strip of land, basically about 3 feet wide total between our two driveways. And we had two downspouts that basically drain about 40% of his roof and 50% of mine come down together into this one spot. And it always like overflowed because we built in the 90s. So, it was a splash block situation. We had I guess about an 8 foot long and 4 feet deep dry well lined with filter fabric and filled with pea gravel. And then the top 6 inches of it was topped with topsoil. And we don't see any overflow of that except in an absolute major storm that has occurred, over this past summer because we installed them in the spring. So basically what happens is even though this is clay, that water is absorbed into the soil. So that's something to think about, especially in the areas where the water is coming down on the backside towards the ponds. Is like, you don't have to you can send some water into the ponds, but why if you can actually make it absorb into the soil as it is? So something to consider because they're simply not very expensive at all, and certainly a lot less expensive than piping it somewhere with all the future problems of cleaning it out as it over time gets plugged up. The dry well, with filter fabric around it is, not going to ever get clogged up really. So anyway, again, I want to state that the density I think is overwhelming. I mean, it's like you've got some of these places where it's basically you're looking out at a small, tiny strip of ground that doesn't even have space for a tree on one, or sometimes it even looks like both sides of some of the units. One being a driveway side and the other one being like a sidewalk. It's like I think that the density might be able to be sustained, but you need to spread it out a little more, and I'm not sure you actually have the space to do that. So that's my comments.
All right, thank you, William. Let's go to William Penniman.
Thank you. Scott, in the thing you sent out, I had one question, which is on the last page of the, it's the diagrams thing, excerpts from the CDPA. And if I can get mine to work, there we go. Do you have that
I do.
Okay. Um,
You're talking about,
in
just
it,
to make sure, I guess I've got the same page that you do. It's you're talking about the
sheet
Sunset
11
Hills Road section.
is sheet 11, and it shows um, the I guess it's where the WNOD is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. There are two what looks like partial trails or something, and one of them says off-site trail connection if permitted by NVRPA. And I guess my question is, are those supposed to go over and connect to the pathways someplace, or are those just to connect to the WNOD?
So it actually it connects into the overall trail network. Actually, let me share my screen, and I can explain this a little bit more. So it's we have it actually connects to both the on-site trail network, but also to Sunset Hills Road. And so what we're showing is, we've got the new sidewalk that we're putting in on Sunset Hills. You've got a connection that gets you back to the WNOD. And then we also have a connection off the WNOD that gets you into the park system, or the on-site trail network. And the reason those are separated is that that's the guidance that we've gotten from the Regional Park Authority, in terms of they don't like sort of direct crossings of the trail, and they also want to limit the number of connections that they have. And so those are the two connection spots that that we've been discussing with them that meet their design guidelines.
Okay, right. Okay, that's where that came from. Okay. Beyond it, I mean, the questions people have asked are all good questions. I'll give you a couple of comments. First place, thank you for the open space and the EV and solar readiness. I think those are great. The open space in particular, the fact that it's publicly accessible is terrific, and that's valuable for all of us. And it's for that reason I'm less concerned about than other people are about the privacy concerns and so forth, or the small lot size, because I have very little doubt you'll get a lot of people clamoring to live here because they're going to have that open space. They're going to have a large area instead of a little tiny lot that they can say is their own. They're going to have a bigger shared lot, and I think that's great. I did hear somebody, a couple of people commented on the isolation, and you might even have agreed with them, but frankly, it doesn't look to me, it's walking distance to Plaza America, Reston Town Center, and 2 metro stops. And so it'll be quiet. It's not on a main highway, if that's what isolated means, but it's really a very well situated project. And I think I can't really comment on whether it's too dense or not too dense, too many units, but I doubt you'll have trouble selling them in any event. So I think it's, and I'm glad you made the commitment on the 24-hour access. That's important to the community around you, and that's really great. So I guess I think it's a good project. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Before I go to Commissioner Carter, and then I'll go to the pull some of the public comment. Let me just make a few comments of my own. Scott, help me with this one question. First of all, I do appreciate some of the changes that were made based on some of the committee comments. Definitely love the open space that's going to now be truly allowed for the public to use, and then the Nova Parks dedication, I think, was all helpful. If I remember correctly, I thought I saw where there was a waiver being requested of the sidewalk along Sunset Hills Road, but in your presentation you said you're providing that sidewalk, and maybe I misinterpreted the waiver, or was that a change?
It was a change. So
Okay.
we had initially, I guess there were a couple things going on with the sidewalk there. The one is that Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority actually owns a portion of that frontage already, and so part of that sidewalk was off-site. I think there was also some discussion about kind of when the interim condition would go in with that sidewalk and the streetscape, and that's the change that we've made is the commitment to the sidewalk. We've worked with Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority to make sure we can get the sidewalk across the entire frontage. So that's a change where we're actually putting in that sidewalk now.
Okay, great, thanks. So you heard from many of the my colleagues here about the importance of the RA membership. In your revised questionnaire, or the one you submitted just most recently, you had a flat out no for that question. So in tonight, you mentioned you're still kind of in discussion and negotiations with that. So I will also be one to stress highly the importance of that. Bringing a residential development into Reston and the impact it has on all the neighboring trail systems, open space, and the like throughout Reston is very, very high, and so that becomes extremely important for those of us who live here. I noticed on. I also wanted to ask the question about the secured access. I guess either I missed it on your prior presentations. I thought American Dream Way was just going to kind of remain open to all users, office and residential users. You're now suggesting that there would be a secured gate on that kind of to segregate the office from the residential. And is that just a temporary while the person who leases the existing office today is still there, or is this a full-time, will that always be that way in the future?
Yeah, so we've had that gate in there, and I apologize if it didn't get highlighted the last time around as clearly as it should have. But so there's existing gates on American Dream Way now. What we've proposed is moving those gates back further so that you've got a significant portion of it open. But we are proposing to leave those gates for a future tenant we need them for the existing tenant on the site, but also want to retain them for the potential of a future secure tenant. And so it's really going to be up to that future secure tenant on kind of whether those gates go in or not. We've left in the option that they'll be there.
Okay. And I get that, it's nice to have a secured, office space, but to me, it detracts from the combination of having the mixture of uses. And now you're having one access point to the 90 plus townhomes as opposed to two access points, on a regular basis. And to me, that diminishes the effectiveness of the mixed use. Hey, so then I noticed Proffer 58 has some funky wording in there that seems to imply that there could be future waivers or modifications to the landscape proffers subject to the urban forestry division. And it just seems so open-ended to that basically it seems to imply that anything that's listed in the proffers can be waived in the future, which just seemed a little counterintuitive from a proffer language standpoint. But so I just was bugged about that a little bit. You heard a lot of comments about landscaping tonight, and so for example, the native species and all that comes into play when you're talking about possibly waiving or modifying any of those proffer languages. So maybe that could be narrowed to what you're really concerned about, perhaps. And then the last comment I have, Scott, is I think there's a sheet that's labeled like L8 or something like that in that excerpt that you gave us with the updated plans. And the one thing that I think you're hearing from some of my colleagues is this is an urban looking design, and not everybody's in favor of that urban design. And I'm not a particular fan of it, but I do understand some people like to have a more urban situation, maybe less yard, less maintenance and the like. But one thing that's a little bit misrepresented on those architectural graphics is the architecture is nice. I like that. But when it comes to how the driveways are depicted and there's green space in between the driveways, I don't think that green space actually occurs on your plan views. And so what some of these plans really end up is just almost a sea of cement and asphalt and no strips of green space at all because of all the utilities and utilitarian things that have to go on in between the units. And so I think the intent on that sheet was to show the architecture, but to me, it misrepresents a little bit the true on the ground, what's happening in between the driveways. And to me, that's an important part of this plan and the landscape architecture that really should be a bit of a detail to be focused on to just make it more, more aesthetically pleasing, I guess. So that's all I had from a comment standpoint. So I would like to, Jose, I'm going to ask for your help here in terms of
John Carter.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Tammy.
Yeah.
Commissioner Carter.
Hey, Rob, I'm so sorry. Can I just ask, though, because I think that last point you brought up is critical. Can we get a response from Scott on that?
Sure. So I was going back and looking at our the plans while Rob was asking that, and I may defer to our landscape architects, but I guess as I'm looking at it, I think there is space that's shown in between the front load units, where you would have
This
sort
is
of
Matt.
that landscaping.
It's absolutely well taken, but those precedent images were purely for architecture. It's hard to get an image that solves all all answers in one shot, sort of thing. And that's absolutely something we'll have to deal with as we get down the road, because we're just like you. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to happen in these alleys, and we want it to be as aesthetically pleasing and functional as possible. But right now we're dealing, and we don't have final architecture, so it's kind of hard to figure some of those things out, if that makes any sense. But absolutely agree with you. These are realities we're going to need to contend with.
Yeah, often the attention is in the detail, and I agree. The difference, though, that can make with just that attention to that type of detailing, even if it's a 2 or 3 foot swath of green in between the townhome driveways, that results in less of a sea of asphalt or pavement or concrete versus makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, particularly when you have long shots down an alley. I agree with you 100% on that.
Hey, before we go to Commissioner Carter, Mike, you had one thing you wanted to reiterate before, and I forgot to go back to you.
Yeah, Rob. Sorry, I'm trying to get my video going. I meant to also mention that after all my comments, pros and cons, that I also had a bit of a concern with the density. This would be a lot easier for me if it was 60 to 70 townhomes and not 90, and we could open up some things and wider streets and maybe in other things like that. So I just wanted to mention, didn't want to let it go, that I'm also with some of the folks who have a bit of a problem with the density. That's it.
All right, thank you, Mike. Commissioner
Rob,
Carter.
if I could just address the density quick. I'm sorry to prolong the discussion. But I did want to just point out, I guess, again, that I think we're in line with the density that's called for in the comprehensive plan. But I guess I would also point out that the part of the trade-off and the reason that we're able to provide, I think, such significant park space is because we've tried to create a little bit more of an urban design for the layout of the townhouses, so that we're maximizing that open space on the site. But also, that density is sort of the trade-off and what helps us to have an economic project that allows us to provide the significant park space. So I did just want to sort of put that on the record, and in terms of kind of why you're seeing what you are.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Commissioner Carter.
Okay, I'm just going to talk about other things. We mentioned this last time, the connection to that historic house. We need to have that shown on your plan. There's a historic house just to the north there. parking, I know the staff is concerned about perpendicular parking along the American Dream Way. So that's one. And then Rob stole my thunder there a little bit, but we have design guidelines that have not been in the forefront, but we need to follow those design guidelines for the TSAs. And one thing that hits you on that is that setback between the houses and the streets. The design for local streets requires a 5 to 6 foot lawn panel. It wants trees in that lawn panel less than 30 feet on center. It wants street lights 60 feet on center. That would add 30 to 40 trees to your site, which would be a benefit, I think. So yes, pay attention to that, the streetscape guidelines for the local streets in the TSAs. And if you did that, I think that would probably closely match your elevations that Rob was talking about. So I know that may be different than elsewhere in Fairfax County, may be different than elsewhere in Reston outside the TSAs, but that is the design guidelines that we have to work with. So take a look at that.
Yeah. And I believe we've designed it to meet those design guidelines, but we will take a look at that. And I know we've had some discussions about some of the streetscape, and we've certainly revised the streetscape, particularly on those interior streets, to address a lot of the comments that you had brought up the last time around in terms of trying to create some additional green space in front of those units.
Yeah,
every street within the townhouse layout that has on-street parking does not have these dimensions. We really need to add that back with the trees that go along with that. I think that would make a appreciable difference in this development. So I'm not going to repeat the other comments. Okay. Oh, and I like your models there in the background. Are those Lego models, or is that?
Those are Lego models.
Okay.
Not fish in an aquarium.
No, I got that.
Okay, so we have a lot of comments in the chat that I'm going to try to just go through a little bit, and then I'd like to take any other comments from the public. There's been some comments about proffers, for example, and to us to review the proffers. We don't often, go a proffer by proffer in this forum, and I know the proffers were sent out to many of us, and I know I reviewed them, and I made some comments on some specific ones that I have. So if there are specific questions that people have, they can kind of ask those questions directly about the what proffers they might have.
Hey Rob, I'm so sorry. Can I just ask real fast of Scott? Have you provided this information to the community groups? Do they have the same information we have? Because they should.
Yeah, so we've provided the plans and gone through the plans at the community meetings, and I know that we've asked individual community members who want copies of materials and have reached out to us that we've provided those. We did not do a mailing to everyone in the community with the proffers, but we've made those available to anyone who's asked for them.
Can you make a link to it publicly available? When we got
They're
our
on
link,
the-
we
They're on
username.
they're on the P&Z website now too.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jake added a link to our website after we had received those over the weekend. So that probably got put on a little bit late, but I think they're on there now. Okay, so one of the questions says, please state the size of the parking garage in the current office building and explain why American Dream Way cannot be a through street for more egress for the additional 100+ cars expected belonging to the new residents, and why has there not been a current traffic report since 2019?
So I guess maybe a couple things. I'll start with the office parking. So we have currently there are, I guess, required to have 1,030 spaces We've proposed 1,243, and part of that is to get a parking ratio that we think makes the building competitive from a leasing standpoint. I think we're at pull up that number real quick. We are at a 3.14 spaces per 1,000 square feet, which is sort of in line for this type of office building. And so I think we're very hesitant to try and get rid of parking for the office because we're concerned about just the marketability of being able to find a tenant for the building with a reduction in the parking. In terms of the access, through American Dream Way, one of the things we've heard is trying to make that public, and there are some issues with that just because the existing American Dream Way actually goes on top of an underground parking garage in one location, and it also has a bridge structure that would prevent it from being accepted into the secondary street system. So I think we do have some concerns about opening that up to the public and significantly increasing the traffic on top of the roadway just because of the fact that it does go over an underground parking garage, and we have some other concerns there. I think, the main sort of rationale for the gates and trying to, keep a little bit of security there, as I said, is really trying to make sure we can market this to secure tenants in the future. We think there's a potential for that, similar to what's there now and the gates that are there now. And I think, also we're not sure that, having this as a future, connection, I guess, into the broader street grid is something that will help the overall traffic situation. I think we're concerned about having American Dream Way be a cut through, and just sort of the increased traffic from that, but also if there are future connections that are proposed, up to North Shore through the road to nowhere through, Hidden Creek. I think we've got some concerns about that as well, and just the traffic volumes that would come from that. So I think that's kind of where we're at on the parking situation in American Dream Way.
Scott, you want to address why the traffic studies from 2019?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot that part of it. So,
Scott, would you like me to address that?
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, this is Kevin Feline with Wells and Associates. And the traffic impact study was actually prepared in 2021. I believe the reference to 2019 is the basis of the traffic study was based on traffic counts collected in 2019. And at the time when the traffic study was scoped with Fairfax County's Department of Transportation and VDOT, it was actually advantageous that there were traffic counts collected in 2019, which were pre-pandemic conditions and represented the worst case scenario. So from the traffic site perspective, it was that 2019 was and is still considered the worst case scenario versus any traffic counts that we were to collect today.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, let me try to read this comment. Sorry, okay, it says, I'm concerned with Mr. Adams' reference to the trail option. It is the North Shore community's belief, based on the most recent communique, that Wheelock and McGuire Woods will be committing to leave the existing North Shore trail connection in its current location, and we will also be making it publicly accessible, regardless of any future secure tenant. Then it goes on to say, as Lynn suggested at our last community meeting, a future tenant may install a fence between the existing office building and the existing sidewalk/trail, provided that the North Shore Trail and sidewalk along American Dream Way to Plaza America remains publicly accessible. We are no longer proposing any alternative trail connection to the Hidden Creek Maintenance Road. That's the end of the comment.
Correct. Yeah, yes, trail will be public. It'll be in the current location. I think the only caveat to that is it might get moved over, 2 feet, so we've got space for the fence to go in. And I think, as we said tonight, we we're committed to having that be within a public access easement. And I think based on the further comments tonight, we can make that public access easement available 24 hours a day.
All right, great. Here's just a comment. This is a unique community around the North Shore, and these people are part. Let's see. Let me read. This is a unique community around North Shore, comma, and these people are part of that. The proposed density between units is not in common with the townhouses right behind them. That's not appropriate. Another comment. Townhouses are great. There are just too many. Let's see, someone just mentions the historic area. This is a historic area of Reston. They can't build on those on the 7 acres that's water. And a couple other comments just about the density of the townhomes being a little too much.
Hey, Rob, I see a couple comments in here about the North Shore Gate that's currently there on that trail. So I just wanted to address that quickly, that Wheelock does own the property, but we have zero control over site access right now. That's 100% with the existing tenant. And we actually did not know that they had closed that gate until we actually were informed by the supervisor's office that it had been closed, which one we reached out and asked the tenant why it was closed, but that's not something that we have any control over.
Okay. Here's just a comment. During the first community meeting, a proffer was proposed to ensure that during construction, workers would be using the on-site parking instead of roads in the area. I didn't hear that proffer. Please confirm if there is a proffer.
I'm sorry, we did make that.
That proffer is still there.
Yeah. It's proffer 63 on construction access.
All right, great.
The staging and parking of construction vehicles must occur on the property, including personal vehicles utilized by construction workers. It's sort of the operative point, and then there's more to the proffer, but that's the commitment, is that all the construction parking occurs on site.
Okay. I think we're down to the people that want to speak. Jose, how are we able to do this?
Yeah, Rob, if it's okay, I know I started at least hearing from some folks in the chat that wanted to speak. And I can also go over the raise hand if that's helpful. Sometimes I forget how to do that as well. So, so I know that I got so I see Lynn has a hand, but I know that we got Rena Corey earlier said that she had a question, as well as Miss Lori Callahan. So let's go with Rena, then Miss Lori Callahan, and then we'll go to Lynn.
Okay, and let's just remind everybody to raise your hand. You to open up the chat. By the chat should be in at the lower right. You can click on the chat, or well, it depends on what your screen is, but.
Yeah, I'll share my event window real quick just to show folks, because I know.
Okay. I think
so
that's
hopefully everyone can see kind of like the black box. So you would click this like little participant pane window tab, whatever. It's like a person holding like 3 plates, and right next to the megaphone should be the little raise hand tool. So it doesn't show on mine because I'm the host of the meeting, but it should be there. But if not, feel free to reach out to me, and I can get you on the list. So I believe I just unmuted Rena Corey. Can you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Yes, we
Okay.
can hear you.
Excellent. It's sort of a down in the weeds question, but it's important. I feel like we really need to nail down the details of that pedestrian access before we approve the plan, because otherwise all sorts of things could go wrong. My particular question is, now when you come through the pedestrian gate from North Shore Drive, how do you head west? Do you have to walk all the way up to Sunset Hills Road to turn west? Because currently you can just immediately go west and then take American Dream Way and then hit the bike trail. Okay. The only other way is to go down the sidewalk a bit and turn, I'm sorry, yeah, turn west right after the office building. And there's a little path that goes into the public grounds, not so public grounds. And then you sort of can maneuver your way to the bike trail. But with the diagram I'm seeing now, especially if you put up a fence, what happens?
Sure. So let me see if I can share my screen and. Oh.
I'll give you those privileges shortly.
Okay, thanks.
You should be able to shortly.
Okay. So I guess just so I understand it, you're talking about how do you get from sort of this, the trail connection here down to the WNOD?
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, I think there's a couple ways under the proposal. I think the first would be to come down to Sunset Hills and come over to the trail connection that's being proposed from Sunset Hills. I think the other is, I believe there's a trail that runs along the back of Ivy Oaks that connects down where you can either, I guess, come down Old Reston or come through the site to the WNOD trail connection here.
That's true, but we used to be able to come through the gate, hop on American Dream Way on our bikes and just bike over. So you're saying we have to walk our bikes because the other side of that wooden fence is Ivy Oak, which is actually private property. And we'd have to walk the bikes along there until we could get sort of to the end of the fence.
Isn't there a road back there out of curiosity? I think there's a road.
Part of it's a road. I don't know if it's part of it's paved, part of it isn't. I have a skinny tire bike, so I'd be walking it. But so you're saying that access on American Dream Way would sort of be cut off. My other question about the fence is this: if you put up a security fence to keep the office building secure, currently there's a wooden board fence between the property and Golfview Court and the golf course maintenance road and all that. So would there be two fences and we'd be walking between them, or would you be removing the wooden board fence and we just have that one fence to our, between us and the building?
Yeah, so I don't know the answer on whether the wooden fence that's kind of behind the landscaping along the property line would be taken down. I mean, I think what we're proposing is you would have a fence that would run along, this side of American Dream Way, sort of on the outside of the existing sidewalk.
Yeah, and I'm not just asking this out of idle curiosity. The thing is, as a woman walking, a pedestrian walkway has to be set up so that you feel safe and you don't feel trapped and you have somewhere to go. So if you have like two fences there, that's scary. So it's something to keep in mind, and I hope when it is designed that some women are part of deciding the design so that it's safe, and hopefully maybe with some lights, things like that, My other question,
and we can certainly look at the sort of that wood fence, and whether that if we have the security fence that would go in here, whether we can just agree to take that down.
Okay, thank you. My other question is more for the panel. I feel from some of their comments, I don't know if all of you have actually been to this site, walked around, seen the actual layout, or have only seen the design, and have also seen the surrounding neighborhoods, because one person mentioned that these townhouses are a good step down from single family houses, but actually all the surrounding communities are townhouses or apartment buildings. I agree with the people who said they are a little too dense. I mean, especially in summer, when you have all that pavement, if you don't have enough trees and a little bit of greenery, it gets a lot hotter. There's a word for that. They're like urban heat oases, I think, and it's really bad, especially with climate warming. So I agree with the people who feel there should be a little more green and a little more space. I would ask the panelists to go see, if they haven't already, to go see the Tall Oaks development to see how canyon-like it is when the rows are too close together, the rows of houses. It really changes the character, even though I love those houses and I think they're really cool. And in general, I love the plan. I think it's great that there's all that open space, but I feel that if Wheelock's getting a little too much credit from some of the panelists about having all the open space, because you can't build there. I mean, you would, no matter what, you're building on most of the available space, it seems to me, unless I'm misunderstanding something. So, and there was one panelist who said, it's great you're not building right up against the road. You can't build up there. There's a hill, and then there's the bike trail, so, and then there's the ponds. So I just want the panelists to be really familiar with the area before they make any decisions about the project. But yeah, but I do feel like aren't you building on all the available space pretty much? Because you can't build where the ponds are, where the floodplains are, right?
The original plan actually showed a parking garage that extended out into the pond closest to the building. So we pulled it back from that.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's interesting.
All right, Ms. Corey, is that it?
Yes, and I also like to emphasize the importance of talking. I want to know who takes care, who pays for the upkeep of the public part, the parkland part of the development once it's built. Is it the owners? Do they pay like HOA fees for that?
Yeah, so the way we have it set up is that we'll have what's called an umbrella owners association that'll cover both the office and the residential portion of the property. And so it'll be a combination of the office and the residential that will cover the cost of maintenance.
Okay, so it's just set up the way all the mini HOAs are set up in Reston, where we take care of our common area, and then we also are part of RA, which hopefully this will be. And I just want to point out that, yes, you have most of the clusters near there have large amounts of open space that is shared, but we also have a little more greenery between the houses. So we have both. And I agree with the panelist who said there's no gathering spot for the residents, which makes a big difference in neighborhood cohesiveness, or one that's not large enough, say, to have everybody gather. So it might be something to take into consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Corey.
So Rob, we have Ms. Callahan and then Lynn.
Great.
Ms. Callahan, can you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I too am concerned about the density. I live right across North Shore from the proposed area. And my husband and I, our grandkids, walk around the ponds all the time. So I think it's a bit of a misrepresentation, a bit misleading that there isn't currently public access. We walk around the ponds all the time and enjoy the wildlife. And I am concerned about the wildlife in the area with some of the proposed walkways, especially around Pond A up by Reston, Old Reston Avenue. We have great blue heron, we have migratory birds. And if you have walkways that are too close at every point around the ponds, it's really going to impact the wildlife. So I would actually like to see an environmental impact study done before you proceed, if that's possible. Density is also a big concern. I think the way it's proposed is out of character with historic resting communities like the Charter Oak townhouses where I live right across the street, which was built early on in the development in '69. I think there needs to be more green space. I would be a lot happier with closer to half the density that's being proposed, with a lot more green space in between the units. And the walkway currently through the gate off of North Shore, right now we can walk through there and get directly to the ponds, walking around the Fannie Mae building and down to the ponds. Is that not going to be an option going forward? I'm a little concerned about that.
And Plaza America too.
Well, they've already addressed Plaza America, but to be able to get to the ponds from that gateway. Has that been can that be addressed?
Sure. So I think the way that you would get to the ponds is that I believe there's a trail that connects into that existing trail connection that runs along the back of, or sort of in between this property and Ivy Oaks, that then connects down to that trail network that we're proposing closer to Old Reston.
That's not a proper pathway, though, what you're suggesting. I mean, right now we can walk through the gate and just right around the building, and the hours of operation at that gate has been 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. And it has been open. And I've lived here for 17 plus years, and I've always had access to those ponds and have walked them regularly. So I think people on the committee who aren't familiar maybe with that property are not understanding how much that has already been part of our community for many, many years, and that access is important to us. And again, I think we're losing sight of historic Reston and how it was designed. This is not an urban area. You're still part of the historic part of Reston. And I think the design of the townhouses needs to fit in and have a lot more green space and a lot more concern for the wildlife in the pond areas. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Callahan.
Okay, so we did get through the chat that there's someone that needs to jump off. Would like to ask their question. She asked, and I hope I get this right, will the urban heat effect cause damage to the 300-plus-year-old sycamores along the back of Ivy Oak Square?
That's an engineer question. Kevin, did you have an answer for that?
Or Steve Crowell.
So did you mean me? Or
I'm sorry.
Steve Crowell.
Steve Crowell, sorry.
I mean, I'm honestly not an arborist to give that answer definitively. I mean, I wouldn't think so, but that's honestly not my area of expertise.
Mike Van with McGuire Woods. I mean, I'm also not an engineer, but I have worked as an environmental planner before, and I just, the idea of an urban heat island, it really is for areas of a lot greater surface area than what we're talking about here, particularly when you're surrounded by the amount of green space that this site has. So you're going to get that, like, obviously in DC or very large shopping centers with a lot of impervious surface. You're not going to get that on a site that has this amount of impervious surface, particularly when you're surrounded by this amount of open space. I would mention that this residential option is going to have a significant reduction in impervious surface compared to what was approved with the previous office option.
Thank you, Mike. So next was actually Lynn Molston. Oops. Lynn, I made you a panelist, so I think you should be able to unmute.
Thank you, Jose. I appreciate it. It's good to see everybody. I wanted to start by just Laura Callahan, who I think just spoke previously.
Hey, Lynn.
I'm not getting Lynn.
It may be me, but I see a triangle, and you may be having some connection issues.
Lynn should turn off her video.
Yeah, have her turn off her video.
Lynn, could you try turning off your video real quickly?
Yes. Is that better? Better? Configure. Can you all hear me?
Lynn?
Yeah.
Lynn, we have you, and you're unmuted.
I am here. Yeah. Jose?
Lynn, can you hear me?
I would suggest that Lynn tries to go out and come back into the meeting. I think and then try not to do video.
Lynn, would you like me to bring you back as an attendee, and maybe that kind of helps this out?
That would be great.
Okay.
You're good now. Start talking.
Oh, okay, good. So, all right. Thank you, Tammy. So I just wanted to build on what Lori Callahan from Charter Oak Cluster Association was saying in terms of how this proposed configuration fits with the current neighborhood. And I've got a statement that I need to read from one of the residents at North Shore Cluster. I've got a recommendation, and then I just want to make my own statement, and it builds on Lori Callahan's observation. And I would just like to ask that you perhaps take a look at the configurations of your neighboring communities and townhomes and redesign this site to match the neighboring townhome clusters. I've heard people talk about the configuration of tall oaks. That is not what we want in Reston, and this looks a lot like that. I do have, and first, and forgive me, I want to thank the Reston Planning and Zoning Committee for the important function that you all contribute to Reston. I don't think that's been acknowledged enough tonight. What you're doing is so important, and the decisions that you make are critical to the future of Reston. And please don't take your functions. It's so important. I want to thank you, Chairman Rob, and the committee for the time that you're allowing me to speak tonight. Rob, you mentioned that you all received a letter from Christine Barnert from the North Shore Cluster. She did write to Supervisor Alcorn, Commissioner Carter, and Chairman McKay as an individual. I'm not going to read that on her behalf, but I would ask if you would please incorporate her letter into the minutes of tonight's meeting. And then finally, I have been requested as president of Reston Citizens Association to read a statement from another resident of North Shore Cluster who is unable to attend this evening's meeting. In fact, all of the residents of North Shore Cluster are unable to attend because they're holding their annual meeting tonight. So I had offered to read a statement and I was taken up on that. So if I may, I will start with the quote. Thank you, Lynn, for serving as my proxy for the January 25th RPZ committee meeting and reading this message on my behalf. Dear RPZ members, your meeting coincides with the North Shore Cluster Home Association's annual meeting, which was scheduled prior to the knowledge of this RPZ committee meeting with Wheelock. As such, you will have a few, if any, NSC residents participating in this meeting. As the volunteer member of the NSC in matters pertaining to residential impacts brought about by construction or otherwise to land adjacent to our property, we are pleased to hear that Wheelock has abandoned the option to pursue using the Hidden Creek Maintenance Road as a formal public trail to Plaza America on Sunset Hills. Using this maintenance road, which only leads to the workers' facility used by the golf course, and for NSC residents' trash and recycling pickup, was a great concern to many of the NSC residents. So we are relieved this is no longer on the table. The building of an additional 92 townhomes on the property is still a concern for many of the NSC residents and will be discussed at the annual meeting. Any decisions made by the NSC residents at our annual meeting as they pertain to this potential residential rezoning will be followed up with actions deemed suitable by the homeowners, such as letters to Supervisor Alcorn and the Reston Association. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this important meeting. Sincerely, Michelle Silver. And that concludes my reading of the statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Okay, Rob. I see some additional hands. We have Kevin Danaher and Jose Corbella. So, Kevin, can you are you able to speak?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I'm not going to do video because there seems to be so much trouble with that. And I'm going to try to go as fast as I can. My name is Kevin Danher. I'm the president of Ivy Oak Square Condo Association. We are the neighboring community on the north. So a couple quick comments. Committing to the path 24/7 from North Shore to Plaza America, hugely important to this community. So that'll go a long way toward appeasing a lot of folks that are upset about this. We appreciate you keeping the public art. That's been, I've got pictures of my little kids over there on that art, and now they're grown and out of the house. So that's really important that we keep them that. Do want to figure out the fence line maintenance between the properties. We don't have to go into that now, but I do want to keep that on the agenda between the two property owners. Want to make clear that that path that we've been talking about that's come up a couple of times behind Ivy Oak Square, but that's on the north side of the fence line, is actually not a public path. We have a lot of trouble. We have signs up that say no trespassing. The reason it's important is going back to that fence line is people go down that path, decide they don't want to go that far, kick boards out of the out of the fence, and then cut through that way. So we don't want that to be a public pathway. Negative comments that things we'd like to see committed to is lower density. I'm not massively, but the density here is twice what Ivy Oak is and more than twice what the townhouse folks are. And I know it's going to be higher density, I understand the concept of as you approach the metro, it gets higher and higher density. But I think there you could probably lose 10 or 20%. And then I think it's really important that this development is with Reston Association. It makes for a stronger community, and that's why it's really important. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Danaher. Jose Corbella.
Am I live? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm actually speaking for my husband. We're putting kids to bed. So I mostly have comments about this. I tuned in because I was really upset about having the Plaza America gate cut off on North Shore Drive. Like, that's sort of our lifeline to commerce, to the grocery store, to the pharmacy, to the Starbucks. It's really accessible. It's far more accessible than Reston Town Center, and I use it all the time. I also love the Fannie Mae Park. We call it the Fannie Mae Park. It kind of guts me to think you're going to dig up everything green there and just sardine in townhouse after townhouse. I do worry about the urban heat island effect. I worry about the hundreds of geese that make it their home there for months at a time, and the other wildlife. It's just, I shudder when at this point in history, we need so much green. We're going to tear up more green to put in, shiny townhouses that to me look very much like the one that just went in that we keep referring to. I can't remember its name right now, but you all know what I'm talking about at Wheelie and North Shore. And then listening to more of the comments, I kind of got more appalled. I'm shocked that we're building on a floodplain. That's really appalling, given the weather changing that is happening. And I don't understand why they are not part of Reston Association. I don't understand why my Reston Association duties are going up every year, and then we're allowing communities to come in and not be a part of it, even though they're enjoying all of the amenities. They can come to the pool with me. They can send their kids to the camp. That's great. But I think if someone builds here, they should be part of Reston Association. I don't understand why they wouldn't be. Why we'd excuse that. Yeah. the density is far too high. There's too much pavement and not enough green. And obviously, if it was up to me, that would just be a park. The lakes, the ponds are beautiful. The space that they're giving us seems to mostly be pond, so that's questionable. But yeah, we need access. We really do need access. And it can't just be like an alleyway. Raina's description of it kind of terrified me. I don't know that I want to walk it at all. And I think that's the end of my comments. Domingo, do you have anything to say about it? No, my son doesn't have anything to say about it, but he loves Fannie Mae Park too. Pirates hide out there, so it's a pretty popular place.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all you're doing.
Hey, Rob, could I just clarify one thing? Because we've heard it a couple times, is that we're building in a floodplain, and we are absolutely not building in a floodplain.
Right. I think it'd also just be clear, Scott, for the comments that I think we're getting about the access. I mean, again, my understanding of the original plan that was approved didn't necessarily commit to all this public access that's been allowed over the years. It's just been, I think, through the ownership allowing that access to occur, but it's not been a commitment that was there prior.
Correct. There's no public access that is, I guess, included in the existing approval, and it's all private back there. And I think obviously people are going back and using it, but it is not public. I guess there's no public access that is sort of guaranteed there for that land. And I guess my one sort of point on that is that's kind of what this project is proposing, is to make sure that there is that guaranteed access to that park space, in addition to enhancing it and adding additional amenities, upgrading the trails, putting in seating and things that make it a lot more usable and welcoming for the public.
Yeah, Lynn writes in the chat, that's why Fannie Mae was such a wonderful neighbor, and I agree with that. It's just, you're never guaranteed of that wonderful neighbor. And so here, this is one way of trying to potentially secure the public ability to have that access to some of that open space, I guess in perpetuity, as opposed to the reliance on whether or not a future owner would be so gracious as Fannie Mae was. And I think that's a difference. I mean, I can appreciate, because I've enjoyed it myself by going over there. I always felt weird though, not knowing if it was truly I was allowed there or not. But certainly the local neighbors have been used to that. But that could be stopped at any moment in time, and the way it's set up right now. So
Hey Rob.
Yes.
Real quickly, I did get two things in the chat. I'm guessing they were sent to me. Wanted to ask if I could read their question for them to the applicant. They had to sign off. They had a follow-up. So I hope I don't pronounce their name wrong, but my name is Jan DeLucian, and I'm an Ivy Oak resident. I am very concerned about this is consistent with other Reston communities. This is not consistent with the North Shore Loop community as originally planned by Bob Simon. Just because it's over a fence doesn't make it not part of that community. And because of that, they must be part of Reston Association. And I think this came from Mrs. Corbella or also Domingo. But we're not gaining better access to the ponds. We won't be able to reach it through the North Shore Gate. And the question I think was, we have to walk all the way around. Am I correct? And I can if they need to maybe provide clarification, I'm happy to unmute them as well.
Jose, this is Steve. Let me answer some of it really quick. First, because the site is private, you'll have access to the ponds, which you really don't have now. You only have because Fannie Mae let somebody. So you would have to walk all the way around. The way the plan works, what we thought was the most important thing was making sure people had access to Plaza America, and that's what that path does. As far as taking away the fence, on that side to the other comment, sure, that's fine. I agree. It's, you know, we don't want to create a dog tunnel, a dog run. So that doesn't work for anybody, especially from a crime standpoint. I totally agree. To Kevin, I want to really quickly, the fence line, I believe we have the fence, so the fence maintenance would be on this community, not this community in the office building, not on IPO. Yeah, I hope that answers that question. In terms of density, I've heard a lot about density, and I do want to point out, Wheelock is getting rid of 230,000 square feet of density. That's a lot of density. And this is not a rezone. This is, you know, this is already zoned and approved. This could be something else. We're just trying to figure out an option that brings us in line with the comprehensive plan and everything else. You know, if they can't find something that is in line with the comprehensive plan, they already have an approved zone. They go a different direction, which, you know, they're trying to find something that works for everybody, what's best for the Reston residents. So that's, I think, the goal. That's why on the density, and I think Scott or Mike, you may have looked at density from other clusters nearby. And I'll give you an example. I know that I think it's the North Shore cluster, which is where Fairways Court is, I believe. They have 23 units on 3 acres. So their density is higher than what the total density here would be. Char Oak Apartments is 262 units on 12 acres. So when we look at the total density, I don't think this is out of character for the neighboring units. And I know these guys can figure it out better, faster than I can. So I'll let Scott or Mike jump in if they happen to know some data on that.
Steve, really quick, I think there's been a little bit of a disconnect tonight because we heard from Scott that the goal is to better incorporate this and to invite people into the property, yet we just hear from you, no, it's to move people out to Plaza America. So it seems like there's a bit of a...
You know, we had the public meeting where everyone said we want this path. We created a situation where we're gonna have a path. We also created a situation where a lot of this is public open space. The only thing we've always tried to say and try to maintain, and you know, let's face it, right now is a challenging or a more challenging office environment. We don't want to limit who the tenant could be. So, you know, I can look at other ways to get people from this gate over to the ponds, but right now everyone just has to go around. So it's kind of a weird choice. You know, Fannie Mae, apparently they were a great neighbor. But you know what? For me to even drive as an owner of the property, to drive through the property, I have to call Fannie Mae security to have them open the gate, and they didn't even want to let us out there. So, you know, that they let everyone through there is really nice, but it doesn't solve my problem. My problem is, okay, problem A, how do I get people from where you guys live to Plaza America? I think we solved that. I think we can figure out a way that it works for everybody. But you know, getting people to the ponds, there, you know, I have to lean on a little bit on IPO because there's a road behind their apartments that goes to there. So I can't solve every problem. I think we're doing our best, and you know, completing the road frontage in the front is a big deal. You know, we're building a landscape screen and a sidewalk. We're living up to the affordable dwelling unit ordinance. We're providing a lot of money in proffers. You know, there's a lot of huge benefits here. You know, talking about the environment. If no one does anything, that one pond that they're talking about all the wildlife, that will eventually fill in. That thing's only like 2 feet deep. So our plan is to clean everything up, get rid of those lily pads and things like that, which is an invasive species, and see how we can make that a great amenity for everybody. So, you know, I guess I don't know if there's a question that I have attached to that. I'm just trying to say we're trying to find the best answer for everybody, and we ask for help, and you know, I don't know what help we've gotten from the neighbors.
Thanks, Steve. Jose, is there anyone else that you can see has?
Oh, sorry, Rob. I was muted for the longest as I was trying to talk. So I did see in the chat from some of the comment. I mean, from I think it was sent to all the panelists, but stating that we also need access to the bike trail, not just Plaza America, and this was stated at the last meeting. Also, I got you can't count the ponds and wetlands when looking at the density, and we do have access to the ponds now and Plaza America. I think these are previous hands, but I'd be happy to check with them to see if they had any additional comments or questions for the committee, if that's okay, Rob.
Yeah, we can check. We do have to kind of start to wrap this up. It's getting pretty late here, and we
Okay.
do want to kind of make a decision here as whether we are going to move forward with any type of recommendation, any type of motion from any of the committee members or not.
Sure. So I know Miss Corey had her hand on. I'm not sure if it was a previous one.
That was a previous one. Thanks.
Oh, no worries. Mr. Danaher, was that a previous hand?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry about that.
I thought I took it down. Or I don't know.
No worries. And Miss Corbella, was that a previous hand as well? It's not letting me unmute her, so it may be. And then yeah, I think that's it, Rob.
Rob, while we're still in public comments, not to force a public comment, but Larry, did you want to jump in at all and weigh in on where we are with the status of negotiations and getting these folks to be members of the Reston Association?
Sure. Yeah, so I've had several conversations with the applicant. It's really a question of, there's really a cost benefit to it. One of the things I had mentioned to Steve is that you've got 90 homes who are essentially going to be a cluster that have the responsibility for a dramatic amount of public open space, very, very popular open space because it's attached to the WNOD trail. And so, what I want to do is further those conversations if they're willing, about joining RA. So you got 90 units, $740 for this year's assessment, was that $66,000 or so. And whether it makes sense to have them come into RA and have us maintain that open space. That was one of the considerations. Whether they maintain it on their own or not, I think it's important for them to join RA so that you all have heard it here, to bring them into the community. A couple of specific comments. I haven't heard this come up. Is there a necessity to have the fence on the north? I know this is by Kevin Danaher's cluster. We talked about the fence on the east, along American Dream Way, wrapping around kind of part of the north side where the gate is. But, to really have these people be part of the community, it seems like the fence going all the way over to Old Reston Avenue doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's just something to toss out there. I know it's late in the game for that. I do think the connectivity from the pathway that RA initiated with Fannie Mae years ago to get that cut through in. The reason it was never codified into an easement is because Fannie Mae ended up paying for the vast majority of that. We initiated it as part of a Reston on Foot project. They said, yeah, we'll go along with that. We think it's a good idea, a good thing for the community. They ended up paying for most of it, and general unwillingness to commit to a public easement at that. And we just didn't get anywhere beyond that, but they did at least put the gate in. And obviously a lot of people have enjoyed that access to Plaza America. But I think it's important also from that, where that pathway comes from North Shore down, to create access to the WNOD trail, because that's a major access point for that. So anyways, those are some of my questions. Steve and Scott, look forward to further conversations on how this would look in joining RA. I will also point out at the board meeting on Thursday, we have a public hearing on bringing 40 additional homes down at the Arboretum, the Pulte project into RA. So, this is something that other builders and developers are doing.
Thanks, Larry. All right, I want to, I guess, go back to Scott Adams. Scott, based on what you heard tonight, I'd like to see how you'd like us to proceed.
I mean, I think obviously we'd love to get a a recommendation of approval. I guess I'm not sure that that's where the committee is at. So I mean, again, I guess maybe we would wait for a motion from the from the committee on it. Obviously, I think we'd like the recommendation of approval. We think this project has really good benefits for the overall Reston community. I think opening up the site is very important, and as I think has been pointed out a number of times, that open space that's out there now is private, and this will make that open space public and make it into a public amenity. I think all of that said, I guess we leave it up to the committee in terms of whether they want to make a motion to approve tonight, or I guess have us come back.
All right. So with that, do I hear a committee
Rob, this is David Donnell.
Okay,
Could I propose something? I would recommend that we postpone the vote until the next meeting, which would be the 28th of February. Give staff time to write up their report. Hopefully we can get a copy of that. And most importantly, give the applicant an opportunity to do three things, at least in my mind, three most important things. One of which is to sort out and make sure that the residents are happy with access to and through the site. I'm sorry, the neighbors access to and through the site. Two, that the applicant and the Ivy Hill cluster folks and the North Shore cluster folks sit down and talk about number of townhouses. Hopefully, I'm not quite as worried. I'm worried about the number of townhouses, but not quite as worried as some of my colleagues. Hopefully, they can get to a point where it's not as many as the applicant wants, not as many townhouses as the applicant wants, not as few townhouses as the neighbors want, or some of the neighbors. And the third thing is, try to compromise to come to an agreement on the number of units, and maybe better reflect how the neighbors feel about the density there. I think the density for that, what they're asking for, is maybe a little too much, but again, I think we should make sure that everybody has a chance to sit down and work through this one more time. There will be people coming away from next meeting who are not happy, but that's the nature of the business. So, but I would like to get everybody as close together and as understanding of the other's position as we possibly can.
All right, David, thank you. I will still ask if there is anyone there that wants to make a motion tonight.
I make a motion that we defer decision until February 28th.
I'll second that, William.
Okay, is there a second?
Would you entertain a friendly amendment that on the condition of additional community outreach? I just want to make sure that they're not just coming back with the same thing.
Yes.
And I might have cut out last time, but I do just want to say, this should not be, the community outreach needs to be done better.
And we should not have people still at this late game trying to figure out basic things like, is this really an open site? And are you inviting people in or are you cutting people out? So you just have to do a better job on community outreach.
And I'll just say, we can have, additional community meetings. I think, we're trying to work through issues as they come up with the community on the pedestrian access. That was something that came up at the November meeting. And, we've had several meetings since then working through a solution on that. And I think we got to a place where we were reflecting some of the comments that we had heard, and, we can continue those discussions. But, I do want to say we are listening and trying to respond, but we're responding to things as they are brought to our attention.
So Scott, I do just want to highlight one thing though on access to the ponds to the neighboring community. That is something that you should not need the community to come and tell you. That should be something that they would expect. But regardless, you are literally pushing your problem onto another property owner and you are putting it onto Ivy Oaks. So that is not any type of real community outreach with them. And you've got to at least acknowledge that if you're truly trying to make this open to the community, you've instead put a problem on another property owner.
Maybe Rob, maybe you could read what Larry sent in the chat, because I think that's an important point.
So Larry put in the chat, other cluster open space is private. This would be the public realm. It will be whether RA is involved or not, which is a good thing. If RA is involved, they would become part of the greater RA community. So,
and Rob, I'm sorry, this is David Bennell again. One thing that I did leave out was RA. I think the applicant needs to work extra hard and make that commitment. It's too important not to.
Thank you.
Okay,
David.
so there's a motion by Tammy. I'm not sure it was truly seconded.
Mike Jennings seconded.
Okay, is that correct?
It wasn't me. I think it was William Pegways.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
okay.
it was your voice. Okay.
Can we confirm? Is there a second?
Second, Kennedy.
Thank you, Dick. Quick discussion on the motion. My one concern that I've heard tonight, there's been a lot of great comments tonight. I do think there's the underlying density question. While I don't disagree that there's more community outreach that can occur on these trails and access, and I truly believe that'll be worked out, and there'll be a lot of details that can get that done. I am concerned that if some people are not going to be in favor of this urban look and feel and density, and others might be in favor of it. And if that's the real fundamental difference here, there's the issue of do you get the open space and the public perpetuity use of that open space or not? And there's going to be a kind of a fundamental underlying difference here of, while people have had access to these ponds and these trail network, it hasn't been by right. It's been through the kindness of the prior owner. So there is a balance here of getting, something for something else. So I just want everybody to realize that as we kick the can to February, but then in February, if it's still like a density issue and everything else has been worked out, I just want to make sure everybody really understands where this thing's heading.
Real quick, Rob, I don't call what I'm talking about density, because that word these days has a lot of different meanings. It's the way they've squeezed this kind of housing into that small space. And the other quick point is that the count of the little diagram they give us is for 84, and they're they're presenting as if it was also maybe 95. And it's gotta, and I think to get a little bit more beauty to that housing, it's gotta be a little bit less than 84. Enough said.
I'll also add, while I agree, it may come down to a vote of who likes this approach. That'll be the vote at that point. But I think there are enough things out there that, quite frankly, given just the history of this one, it seems we really do need to get on paper and get finalized. And so I think that there is value to waiting and value to ensuring that, we have some issues addressed in the staff report. And I'll just add to David Bennell's list, we also had the mention of streetscapes and green space. So just better addressing those, I think, is important. But the other issue will be a discussion. But hopefully with communication with the community and some additional thought given by the applicant, maybe we might see something different.
All right, if there's no other comment, we'll take a vote on the motion. The motion is to defer and encouraging additional community output and return to the February 28th meeting. I would like to use the chat hand raise for this vote if at all possible. And then I could go down to just to confirm that everybody has done that correctly. So let's try and do that. All right, so I have just,
For some reason, I can't find the hand here on mine, so I'll vote.
Okay,
I'm voting yes.
I've got, in terms of in favor of the motion, I've got Michelle, John Kay, David Bennell, Mike Jennings, Dick Kennedy, Tammy Petrine. I don't think Jake is able to vote. Oh, Jake, he did vote for the motion. Matt voted for the motion. Rebecca voted for the motion. And now William Piggies has voted for the motion. So Bill Penniman sent me a note. Some reason his internet connection got screwed up. So let's just say he'll abstain. And I'm gonna abstain from this vote as well. So that motion passes. So Scott, I guess the summary here, certainly more work to do to just shore up the community access issues, which I heard from you and Steve. I think that's doable, and put more clarity to that. And it sounds like some of that had been worked out at the 11th hour and just maybe not fully represented on some of the plans that we've seen and everything. But I think the bigger issue again is probably the I'll call it the density, but it's just the number of townhomes versus the layout that's there. And I don't know what guidance to provide to you there other than what comments you heard tonight and heard from the community as to, make some considerations as you move forward with your plan.
Understood. Appreciate everybody's time and comments tonight.
I have something for David Barnell. Thank you for your list. That's a good list, by the way. Thanks.
All right. It's been a long night, folks. I appreciate everybody's input and thank you to the public. There's been a lot of, just good discussion and I think in general, and certainly everybody's concerned about our community. That's for sure. Can I entertain a motion for dismissal?
I so move.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Tammy. All right, everybody.
Jose, too.
Yeah. Thanks, Jose, for hosting, and thanks everybody for your patience tonight. And we'll see everybody next month.
Okay. Night.